G'day mates, welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's video, I want to kick off talking about the EU Dreamhack finals. There's a lot to cover. We had some big names struggling like Tayson, ThomasHD, Benjy and Savage didn't quite perform as high as we wanted, but one of the games was completely not their fault. I'm going to show you one of the funniest clips you've ever seen in Fortnite, just one of the strangest glitches you've ever seen, I guarantee it. I also want to talk about Stormyride and Toos winning it, insane performance from them, and how I think the duos has been proven to be the best competitive game mode. Also, at the end of today's video, we've had a skin revealed to be pretty much, in my opinion, the most broken competitive skin right now. It's a new skin and it gives you the biggest competitive advantage for a skin. I'm talking like superhero level advantage right now, and I'm going to explain why that is at the end of today's video. First off, let's look at the overall leaderboard before I talk about some of the specific performances. We had Stormyride and Toos, the Russian-Ukrainian combo, coming in first on 372 points, 6 games played, 1 victory out, and an average elims of 4.3 and an average placement of 7.3. And when you look at that, they were the best team on the day. I've talked about how I think the finals for Dreamhack are a little bit too W key heavy. 6 points per elim, which means 9 elims for a win, is a little bit on the heavy side for me, but at the same time, you're versing the best other 49 duos in your region. If you can drop a whole bunch of elims, you deserve a bunch of points, but Stormyride and Toos did it in really good fashion. An average placement of 7th in 6 set lobby games in duos is phenomenal. We had DKS and Bad Sniper come in second on 3-4-3. We had Heretics, Kinzel, and Wakey come in third on 3-2-2 with 2 victory outs. So they won more of the games, but their average placement wasn't as good as Stormyride and Toos, who their worst placement of the day was a 15th. So they did very well. We also had Flonada, which is Flowiz, and then Tripper come in 4th, Fire and Lucia in 5th. We had Maestro and Styler in 6th, Rifler in 6th and 7th, Bandwise, and I'm not exactly sure who this is, I'm sorry, in 8th, Paco and Kami in 9th, and then ETQ and Stressix in 10th. And it was a good performance overall, but there's a lot of names you're missing there. There is no Tayson team, there is no Benjy team. I'll talk about that in a little bit, but the one thing I wanted to point out as well in duos is a lot of these teams came out of contested drops, and I love that. It's one of the main reasons why I think duos is the best competitive game mode right now. Being contested is harder and it makes the games a little bit worse, but you really can do it out of a contested drop, in my opinion, unlike trios. If we look at the top 8 teams drop spots, Stormyride and Toos went Slurpee, they were unconned, but DKS and Bad Sniper in second went Corny Complex and they were contested. Kinzel and Wakey went Holly uncontested. Flowiz and Tripper went the IO House near Craggy uncontested, but Lucia and Fire went Coral uncontested, but it's Coral, it's on the edge of the map. We had Maestro and Styler Weeping contested and Rifler and Slicks Dirty contested. So of the top 8, 4 of them were contested, 4 of them were uncontested, but 2 of those drop spots were very edge map and not a lot of loot at all that 100% just do not work in trios. So it's really interesting to see how that you can make these drop spots work in duos. It's why I keep saying that whatever your stance is on what your favorite competitive game mode is, right now, in my opinion, the most competitive game mode is duos until we get some map changes. If we want trios to be the next competitive game mode, next FNCS will be trios again, but a lot of us have eyes on what's after that. That is where I want to see either duos implemented or some map changes to add some more POIs. It was so great to see so many teams do well today that were either contested or at POIs that otherwise would not be looked at all in trios. It just gave so many more options and so much more diversity, and I don't think anyone won today just because they had a better drop spot. Everyone had decent drop spots and everyone had a chance to do well. Now, I know you're thinking, Aussie, if contested drops work, then why did some of the big teams like Noel Riley and Vidil come 11th, Benjy Savage in 14th? We had ThomasHD and Tayson way down the leaderboard somewhere. I have never ever seen them in 42nd out of 50th. So what happened there? Well, let's start off with Benjy and Savage. I mean, 14th, they didn't do like terribly by any means. They got 185 points. They had a 7 elim 7th and a 4 elim 11th, but most of their games, they were going around about the middle, and theirs was because, in my opinion, drop spot. I actually do think, despite me just saying how good the different drop spots were and anyone had a chance, I think Benjy and Savage drop could have worked, and I think by itself it's a fine drop spot, but it's one that made being contested very difficult. They were dropping at the castle area next to the IO house over near Believers Beach. It meant that if anyone dropped at either the castle or the IO house, which teams did a few times, it really cut a lot of their loot off, and it stalemated into these really long drawn out fights that didn't let them actually capitalize on the loot they have have because it takes a while to loot their route, and they have to rotate center, and they have to get their storm surge. So the drop spot itself was still viable. Like I said, almost every drop spot in duos is. The issue is the fact that it was one of the more griefable drop spots, and that's what happened. I'm not going to say it's targeted. They weren't on Twitter flaming the team that dropped on them, but unfortunately, it was a drop spot that very quickly became affected by the people around it. They also went down one game to, like I said, one of the strangest and funniest glitches I have ever seen. Let me show you this clip and tell me if you've ever seen anything like this.
I gotta go. Hey, what that get going? Push, get it. 100 nice. Let's go. No, we don't have it. Get up. Yeah. You're jumping in. Oh yeah. Go. Stay on the right. I'm on it. I got it. I'm dead, bro.
Look at this. He's literally. I'm gonna slow-mo this. He's literally so small. He's so small.
Bro, what?
Look how small. Look at that.
Wait, what? Wait, what the f is that? Wait,
it would have been a
so
headshot. I was getting body shots when I was aiming at his head because he's fucking tiny, but his hitbox didn't change.
Bro, what the f is that?
Now, Savage says that the hitbox didn't change, otherwise he would have hit headshots. I actually think it's the opposite. I think Savage's aim was so good, he was still managing to track the tiny target, because if you go back and watch, right before it pushes in the wall, he has this crosshair right above the tiny enemy's head, and it walks through without getting hit. So not only did it make it look way harder to see and way harder to shoot, not to mention just being overwhelmed by the fact you're versing an enemy half the size, I think it actually did make the hitbox smaller. So I'm not going to try and say that this clip, is the reason why Benjy and Savage didn't win Dreamhack, because, they came outside top 10, but what just happened? I had to show it because it wasn't just your normal glitch. That has to be one of the strangest glitches I have ever seen. I watch more Fortnite than I think anyone else in the world, and I have never once seen anything like that. Moving on to the other notable team, you're probably thinking, why did they perform so poorly? We had ThomasHD and Tayson in 42nd. Now, again, it's final lobbies, it's set lobbies. Some teams don't always have a great performance. I don't want to start putting a whole bunch of crap on ThomasHD and Tayson saying they threw, they tossed, they're terrible, he's washed. It's just because Tayson is so consistent in set lobbies, possibly the worst I think I've ever seen him do. It's going to raise questions, and I know what you're probably thinking. Oh, did they get contested? Did they get griefed? Did they crash? What happened? I think it was a combination. I think Tayson was not feeling too well. He did end up tweeting out, being sick and playing tournament is so unplayable. My head is so hot. I feel like it's going to explode and I can't even think properly, and so much shit we died to today, it's insane. And from watching the games back, there was just a lot of really unfortunate mid-game fights with third parties, or getting sniped right as the fight started, or players just hiding in rat spots and beaming them as they walked past. There was just a lot of frustrating things for Tayson and ThomasHD today. Their highest placement was a 20th place overall, which just, as you guys know, for Tayson is just ridiculous, and ThomasHD for that matter. So I wanted to include and talk about them because I know you guys would be asking, but it wasn't some crazy, like they got griefed or anything. Just think it was a combination of Tayson not feeling too well and then not getting the best luck in game that probably just led to them tilting, I imagine, as well. It's just not too fun to play when you're sick already and then you have a few unlucky games and it doesn't really end well. I'm not going to go through the whole leaderboard because there are a lot of relevant teams up here as well, but I did want to take a chance to talk about Jack and Acorn, who I think did incredibly well. They came 13th overall from NA. That is a very, very solid performance from them. First games as well, they were trying to go Flopper Island, like, the island north of Craggy. They were trying to take that as a duo. And again, I know I've talked today about how almost any drop spot can work in duos, but that's a rough one. You are literally edge of the map with zero loot, and if you want to get any of the loot in that area or materials, it takes forever to find them. That didn't work, so they ended up going Lazy Lake, but they actually split Lazy Lake. They didn't really play too aggressively on the teams there. They didn't have too many engagements. They mostly just got a little bit of loot and split. And again, when we had the whole discussion yesterday about how the EU pros were kind of playing the NA tournaments and it was a lot more aggressive and they were dropping the major drops and they were taking early fights and everyone was freaking out that it was griefing, it was interesting to see how Jack and Acorn played it as literal FNCS champions, like best of the best on their region, playing on another region. They showed the pros and the region the respect I think it deserves. They went a POI, but they went a POI that only had one other team at it at the time, Lazy Lake, which can fit honestly two teams. They took the loot and they rotated out, didn't try to play too aggressive, didn't go go too crazy. They didn't drop Slurpee, for example. Remember, Jack and Acorn's FNCS drop and hat dropped since the beginning of time is Slurpee. And the first place team that won was Slurpee. Imagine if Jack and Acorn game 3, 4, and 5, they were like, oh, we're not doing too well at a Flopper Island. Let's just go Slurpee. I guarantee you Stormy Ride and Toos would not have won the tournament. So I know in the discussion yesterday, a lot of you guys in the comments said the same thing. What is this notion that pros like own drop spots? Like, isn't it a battle royale? They can drop wherever they want. And I get that. I do fully understand where you're coming from, and that's why it gets quite confusing. I think the logic here is a lot of these players play a lot of tournaments. They stake out their drop spots. In a lot of people's eyes, they earn them. But in my opinion, it comes down even more so to just the fact that it's a drop spot that you know, and the luck on the day of who gets contested versus uncontested is the issue. It's not the fact that, you know, Bucky and Mac would need Craggy Cliffs to do well. It's just the fact there's another team at another really good POI who just don't get dropped on for whatever reason, and now that team's chance of winning is infinitely higher. It's not that Bucky and Mac would deserve the drop uncontested. It's just the notion that it feels a bit random and a bit unfair that just your team gets picked to be dropped on, and now your chance of doing well goes down the drain. That's what I'm talking about. Not that they own the drop spot, and I really wanted to make that clear because I think that's my fault in yesterday's video. I didn't make that clear enough. I could go through and pick out so many more teams and talk about their performances. I know there's a lot of notable names you're going to want to know about. Leshy's team did really well for having one of the most shamble drop spots I've ever seen, basically splitting the spire and the bridge near Boney Burbs. It's like 7 chests, and that was all their loot. But I don't want to go on too much. I hope Dreamhack comes back. I love Dreamhack, but this looks like it's the last finals duo tournament for quite a while. Dreamhack hasn't said anything else about other Dreamhacks in the future, so I really hope we get an FNCS duos again. I love it so much. NA brought the hype, it brought the beef, all the controversy, the drama, it makes it all crazy. EU was like the much more chill after party. The games were still phenomenal. It was awesome to watch, but there just wasn't all that beef and drama, which honestly, I kind of love EU for at the end of the day. It's way more refreshing just to get to focus on the games and not everything else going on behind the scenes. But duos is wrapped up for now, and man, I hope it comes back. Now, I've never really done a video like this or talked about it. I've talked about which skins you know are good for input delay, which ones give you more FPS, things like that, but this is a new one. We've got a skin that pretty much just has the weirdest hitbox. Now, this is Human Bill. You may have seen Human Bill. Pretty sick skin. When you look into it more deeply, you realize just how insane this skin is because it has apparently over 4,000 customization options. I mean, I hated the skin at first, but now I low-key actually love the look of it. But that's not what I want to talk about. It's the fact that it has one of the strangest headshot hitboxes you have ever seen. Like, we've seen the bananas before where, like, obviously you had the big banana, where's the head? But that never really gave you an advantage because if anything, when you go to peek a ramp, you could see the banana top of the head so you knew when they were going to peek. Bill's the opposite. Bill is a very low-profile, small character model that doesn't have a lot of animation. So again, if you're trying to rock skins that aren't going to make your FPS worse or your input delay higher, this is a good skin. But look what happens when you try to shoot it in the head. Now, this is getting tweeted out and getting attention from pros. We even had Macwood tweeting this out to try and bring attention to it for why so many pros are using it. Like, look at this. Bill's being shot through the head and he's taking no damage. This isn't a glitch. This is just how the hitbox works. And when Macwood tweeted this out, a lot of pros saying the same thing. Oh, Macwood's just learned how hitboxes work. Like, he was getting clowned a bit. But I see where Macwood's coming from. If you're in a box, you're just insane. Like, we're talking millisecond reaction times, right? Like, a flick shotgun shot is just your brain registering things faster than you can even consciously understand what's happening. If you see a character with a head like that and you aim and you hit even like the top third of its head, you're straight up missing. Not to mention a snipe. Imagine lining up a snipe. Imagine Bill's just opening a chest. You line up a snipe, you try to hit him in his big dome, and the bullet just goes straight through. Like, this is actually one of the most OP skins there is right now. And again, it's not one of the ones that looks terrible. It actually looks kind of cool too. You can make some really clean, weird combinations, but it does overall give 2 competitive advantages. It's a clean skin for FPS and input delay, and it has one of the most strange hitboxes I've ever seen. And it's just, again, another case of, yes, cosmetics aren't supposed to give you any competitive advantage. That's how Epic markets them, but we've seen a lot of stuff in the past, like emotes that make you move so you're harder to shoot. But overall, this has got to be one of the biggest competitive advantages I've seen on a skin since the superheroes. Alright guys, that does it for another video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please chuck a like on it. Let me know in the comment section down below your thoughts on anything I talked about. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. It would mean the world to me. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.